I was a fan of Hubert Humphreys, who had talked about coming out of the dark shadows of segregation into the bright sunlight of freedom, equality, and justice, and very involved in discussions about equality, the civil rights movement, how righteous was the cause. I live in the Washington suburbs, but I watched it on television. I was not involved in the march. And I can remember how inspired I was by the Martin Luther King Jr. speech, but by all the speeches, and Peter, Paul, and Mary, if I had a hammer. And I thought to myself, I've got a hammer. It's a voice, it's a hand, it's an ability to become involved. And then I heard, of course, John Lewis speak, and of course, he was about my age. And I was so impressed with this young person who spoke with such passion. And I thought, what a big wheel at such a young age. And the irony is that John Lewis has become one of my closest friends, a colleague in Congress, but more than a colleague in Congress, someone with whom I participate on a regular basis, not only commemorating the August 28, 1963 March on Washington, but also John Lewis's march, along with some 600 others, across the Edmund Pettus Bridge from Selma to Montgomery. I remember a specific incident where we had a guy named Arthur King who became a delegate. And we had a party, a Young Democrats picnic. And Art King was a member of the Young Democrats, and he African American. And of course, he was included. And one of the members, whose name shall remain unnamed, invited us to a very nice piece of property that his in-laws owned. And we went there, and we were starting to set up for the picnic. And apparently his father-in-law came along and said to him, we don't have African Americans on our property. And so he came to me and said, gee, I'm awful sorry, this, that, but my father-in-law doesn't want Art King here. And I said to him, well, if that's the case, we will all leave. So that from the early 60s to now, I've been involved in a movement which says America is about equality, America is about justice, America is about inclusion. And if we exclude people, we undermine our promise to our people and to our country. The reality is that prejudice and segregation of an informal but nevertheless very real separateness still exists. Not as much, not as formal, not as respectable to talk about it. But the reality is there is still prejudice in our country. And the reality is there's been prejudice for millennia, and there's prejudice all over the world. I think civil rights and the respect for others and the admonition to ourselves and to others to respect one another, to treat one another fairly, is ongoing. It never ends. You read the Bible, you read about discrimination and prejudice. You read literature down through the centuries. You read about prejudice and discrimination. The good news is you also read about instances of heroism, of equality, of charity, of kindness, messages of hope for people. And we just have to choose whether we're going to be messengers of hope or messengers of hate. It's better for us. Better for others as well, but it's better for us to be messengers of hope.